right, we're live. Corstian, how are you? How's your week going so far?
Doing pretty good. Celebrating the Broncos win. It was a close game, but they got the win in the end. So celebrating the Broncos sitting at 7-2, near the top of the AFC right now. So that's always good.
Yeah, just a little bit, right?
Yeah, just a little bit.
I gotta look at the playoff picture, but it certainly got shaken up. We'll talk about a lot of teams, including Colts and Steelers. But yeah, I am in classic fashion. I had another heart attack watching the Bears this week.
Yeah.
They somehow find new ways to make games interesting when they don't need to
Mhm.
be. Um, they were up by 14 with 3 minutes to go, and I'm sure most of the people that watch the NFL, like, or watch some of the games, like, know what happened. Um, Ultimately, they came through in a big way, and I just want to say, Colston Loveland has gotten a lot of unfair comparisons to Tyler Warren
Mhm.
because of the season that Tyler Warren is putting up, and he kind of shut everybody up real quickly.
Mhm.
Fact of the matter is he hasn't got a lot of opportunities, and he's been
Mhm.
hurt for a couple games. And even more so, Caleb Williams, seemingly every single week, getting constant criticism from all sides. I'm not gonna put myself out of it because in the past I have looked at Caleb in like the Detroit game last year,
Mhm.
and like some of the decisions, some of his body language in the Bengals game is still bad. Like Case Keenum had to cover him on the TV camera, so you couldn't see it. But when the moment was needed most, he delivered probably one of the best seam ripper balls I've ever seen. We have film of that later, but he just played a phenomenal game. And I for what the Bears are doing this season, they're fighting. And I didn't see that after week 6 last year. So
Mhm.
massive improvement and props for not blinking when everything that could go possibly wrong did. So as a fan, I'm just really happy. Now, obviously, there's things to critique and clean up as always, but they did a great job. So, yeah, it was a solid
Mhm.
week.
Yeah. Yeah. Bears kept all Bears fans nervous. I think when Colston Loveland got that last catch, I'm sure every Bears fan shouted "Go" at the same time, all in unison, all across the world.
Oh no,
I'm just
I was saying get down. I was saying get down because I just didn't want him to get caught, and I thought he was gonna get caught. So I'm like, Colson, what are you doing? And then once he crossed the 15, I was like, okay, all right, just get into the end zone. But I just wanted him to
yeah.
get down. And I just wanted the offense to like clock it so they can kick the field goal. But
Hmm.
I mean, props to him. He had a lot of field awareness and
Hmm.
took a risk, ended up panning off, and yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm sure a lot of Bears fans just like don't let the clock run out in some way or the other. So
Yeah. Yeah. And then I talked about it last week too, where like this week and next week for the Bears is kind of like a really good opportunity to try to get the offense in check where, like you come off kind of a struggle offensive show, like, with your offense just the week prior to this, right? And you have like the
right.
Bengals, which have a weaker defense, and you have the Giants, which also have one of the weaker defenses in the league. And so now you have a legitimate opportunity to be like, okay, let's test out all this stuff. And so we saw, I think what was really exciting was early in the game with the Bears was all like the trick plays, where you're passing it. You had Tyson Bagent and Caleb Williams, I think, on the same play, where you throw it to Bagent and then he throws it back to Caleb Williams, where he has the option to throw up the field to the tight end or to Caleb Williams, kind of just behind the line of scrimmage, still for him to run forward. And so, kind of saw some of the Ben Johnson special plays. I think that people were excited for, and I think this is again a good opportunity for the Bears to do those again against a struggling Bengals defense. But I think it was fun, and I think this is kind of like a glimpse of what we might be able to see from the Bears, and then over the next couple seasons, once things start to come together more consistently. But uh, welcome to the side of football where your team is having a good record, but it's still these really awful wins to see, and you're at because it's like one thing where like I mean like the Broncos are kind of just barely into this too, right? Where you're like when you're a bad team and you're like in these really close games, you're like, yeah, you want your team to win, but ultimately your team's still kind of like the bottom portion of the league. But now that the Bears have a positive record, kind of like the Broncos, it's like these close games have a whole new meaning of okay, well when we sucked and we lost these games, and I mean I guess we got a better draft pick, but now you're like we could be a playoff competitor. We really need to. These are all must-win games now, and so it's a whole another added layer of stress watching the Chicago Bears if you're a Bears fan.
And that's why I'm still pissed off about the Vikings loss because it really shouldn't have been a loss. Like if you think about it, but hey, it's water under the bridge. I'm just happy we got the win this week. So, yeah, let's dive into the film. We got a lot to talk about. A lot's been happening in the NFL. So we'll go ahead and get started. Starting with last night, kind of an unheralded player. Dallas's offense did not look the same as it's been in the past couple weeks. It's been humming. And the Cardinals kind of shocked America really, like with how they played like Monday night. I don't think a lot of people have been paying attention to this team because they've lost like a lot of consecutive games in a row, but it's been like by the skin of their teeth. But there's this one player who made his season debut that I would love to share right now. Walter Nolan, defensive tackle. Just gonna give like a 32-second highlight tape of what he's been doing and how he had an impact for his team. Immediately blows by the guard, sack. Lines up over the center in the tackle, run stuff. Over the right guard now. Like controls the run fit, starts to stop the tackler. Batted down pass. No sack here, but like forcing Dak to check it down earlier than he probably wanted to. You just look at those 5 plays in general, and if this is like just a preview or a teaser of what's to come, Cardinals got a massive boost to their defense on top of already great draft class like that they had this past year. I think they're on the come up, and you've heard my complaints about Tyler. You've heard my criticism of Kyler, and how Jacoby looked. If they're able to round in the form because of this win, if this a win as a confidence booster, NFC West is just as tight as the NFC North, folks. So, yeah, great star, impactful player from the season debut. Sign of things to come. I probably shouldn't have said star, but he might be trending in that direction. So, yeah, just a fantastic debut by Walter Nolan.
Yeah, it just kind of stinks that they kind of figured out the quarterback situation, at least with Jacoby. I mean, obviously, I don't think this is like a long-term solution. I wouldn't be surprised if Cardinals within the next year or two are taking a quarterback in the first round of a draft. But like you said, like with this, they look like they're going to be a lot more competitive of a team. And so, like, obviously, I think they're going to be winning a little bit more in the future, just within the timetable of this season, which is good for morale. But also, it stinks that you're not going to get the greatest of draft picks, especially because like you're in such a competitive division that your playoff hopes are quite slim at this point. Even like going on a couple win streaks like throughout the rest of the season. It's just like a really tough road to climb because you have like the next worst team in the division, which are the 6-3 49ers, which have a bunch of guys you're expecting to come back from injury. And so you're like, oh, that's going to be a tough thing to chase. You have the Rams at 6-2, and then you have the Seahawks also at 6-2 leading the division. But yeah. Do you think I don't know Kyler's contract situation, but I'm assuming he gets. I'd like to think that the Cardinals have plans to trade him over the course of the offseason to a QB needy team. I think that is the best route. I think Kyler just needs at least a change of scenery at bare minimum. I think to find more success. I think as a quarterback in the league. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think he needs to go to a team that will allow him to develop the fundamentals. Like, obviously, we talked a lot about Kevin O'Connell as the landing spot here. Like, Kyler needs a guy like that. I wonder would he be willing to go to LA, sit behind Matt Stafford, and learn under Sean McVay? Is
Mhm.
he willing to do that, or is he insistent on being a starter in this league? Because if he's insistent on being a starter in this league, his opportunities might only be New Orleans Saints and the Las Vegas Raiders. And the way Spencer
Mhm.
Rattler's playing and where New Orleans is this season, I don't think they necessarily want to invest in Kyler. And why should they? They're kind of
Mhm.
not really, and you could say the same thing about the Raiders almost. So if I were Kyler, looking at like how a lot of QBs in his own division that kind of provide their careers.
Mhm.
Like, why not follow that route for to get the best results out of your career, rather than trying to chase the bag, trying to get a starting job, only to lose it in like 2 years, you know? So I think
Mhm.
it's one of those decisions where it's like, does Kyler want to keep playing? Does he want to play in the high leverage games? You need to get that sort of commitment out of him because it has been talked about, like, he needs to study film more and stuff, and when those questions are coming up, that's never good. Like, the
Mhm.
organization should never have to question it no matter how legitimate it is. So,
Mhm.
um, for Kyler, I just think he needs to be in the right environment, and I don't necessarily think Arizona was to even begin with, because
Mhm.
you think about when Josh Rosen was selected, and then the very next year you go with Kyler, and then you thrust in this offensive guru right from the jump, first time head coaching position, and it was clear like he wasn't cut out for the job, even though he was doing phenomenal, like scheming up plays and like adding DeAndre Hopkins and incorporating everybody in the mix. Once he got found out as a head coach. And I think Kyler's been through a lot as far as like what's around him. Arizona hasn't really done him a disservice. But at the same time, he hasn't really been in the situation where he's had to dissect and work on the fundamentals of his game. So Cleveland could be a good fit, but I don't know if Cleveland wants to go that route either because they're not in
Yeah.
a position where they need to. So
Mhm.
it's the only scenario I see is if he's willing to go under a proven head coach and a quarterback whisperer, because that's where he
Yeah.
has the best chance to provide his career.
Yeah, but then you're also at like a tricky spot with him too, where he's already 28 years old. You know, by the time next season starts, he will be 29, and so you're like, and then
Look at
you know
Sam
you look,
Darnold. Look
well,
at
yeah,
look at Daniel Jones. Look at all these QBs, Baker and stuff. I don't like Dak is playing like a heck of a season at age 31 and 32. I
mhm.
I don't think the age argument holds up here. It's more of like the football maturity kind of thing. But
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, and so I mean, like again, these guys, it's while we've seen this trend with the quarterbacks getting better as an age, but also I mean, like you can't say like Dak Prescott, who's just been good the entirety of his career as well, is the guy like the age doesn't matter. I'm talking for a guy
Okay, let
that
me go Joe Flacco
needs
then.
to Joe Flacco's won a Super Bowl. As much as
Okay.
I'll
But
give Joe Flacco. I mean, I don't think Joe Flacco's that great. Um,
I mean, stat line 2 days ago, was that pretty great?
yeah. Did we watch Detroit beat up the Bears' same defense like in week 2?
Yeah, but you probably didn't have Joe Flacco throwing for 440 yards on your bingo cards Sunday, did
Well, yeah,
you?
not maybe not 400 yards, but like when you got T. Higgins and you got Jamar Chase and you got Chase Brown, like you're gonna put up point. You're gonna put up numbers. Um,
All I'm saying is whether it's the Bears defense or not,
I mean,
if
it's
you
still an incredible game.
yeah, like for a guy that's 40 years old with a sprained AC joint, mind
Hmm.
you, like
Yeah.
he was able to play the quarterback position the way it's supposed to be played. And
Hmm.
Kyler needs to get to that point. So how does he get to that point? You either have to have a really, really experienced veteran around you,
Hmm.
or more than likely, which is what I think he should do, get with a quarterback coach or like a whisperer like Ben Johnson, Kevin O'Connell, Sean McVay, that are going to dissect your mechanics from the ground up and make you a better quarterback because of it.
Yeah.
So um, that's what I think Kyler needs for his career, because then he has a chance when he's like 32, 33, 34
Hmm.
to really like hit the peak twilight years of his career where he has a chance to be that like, game factor where he can still use his speed, still use his quickness, still use his scrambling ability,
Hmm.
and play the position the right way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and so it just kind of depends on where like how much he can develop. Because then I also say like the other guys you mentioned, like Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold, Baker, even Dak Prescott, like at a college level, I'd say we're at least decent, just pure quarterbacks. Anyways, I mean they obviously had other aspects to their game that made them skillful. Whereas Kyler definitely was a player that was elevated by his rushing ability, kind of similar to Justin Fields. I think just like I mean, and that's also the other thing too, where it's like if Kyler Murray's looking, if Justin Fields can get what 20 million a year or whatever and be a starting quarterback in the league for whatever reason, like I feel like I deserve that, and that's kind of like the mentality. Because there's always the off chance too where you're like, oh, let me develop as a backup, and then maybe you just never get a starting job again, even if you do happen to develop, which unfortunately would suck. So it's a really tricky game, and it's a gamble that a lot of these quarterbacks take because for every Daniel Jones that sits behind in Minnesota, right, for a year, you have you have like the Mike Glennons, you have Jake Lockers, you have Chad Heens, Blank, you have all these other guys who also had the draft capital. Christian Hackenberg on the Jets, like what 2016 was the guy that people were like, oh, this could be a dude. And so like
These are not names I was expecting to hear like when I logged on today.
yeah, I know ball.
I'm not questioning that. It was not on my bingo card. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, so
I
I mean,
mean,
so I mean, it is for every one of those guys that do make it. Being a backup, there are a bunch that while they might have prolonged their time in the league, that they just kind of stay a backup, and so it's like I don't know what Kyler's official plan is, on how he wants to do things as an NFL quarterback. But there are options. It'll be interesting to see how he goes about it because also like if he gets traded, it's less of a situation like he has a lot of money tied to him too right now, and that's the whole like it's a lot of drama with Kyler Murray. I think in terms of how the Falcons, the Cardinals are going to deal with him
Cardinals.
come the course of the offseason because it's like cutting him obviously is the worst case scenario, I think, where you have just a lot of dead cap money. But then if you engage in a trade where a team is willing to pick up some of that money, then that's a lot more of an enticing option for you in regards to the whole Kyler Murray experiment here. But then if he gets traded, it's less about where he can develop and just kind of getting him plopped into a situation. Um, and so like if he gets traded, he has a lot less choice in how his career goes, is I guess what I was trying to say.
Absolutely. Yep. For the sake of keeping this rolling, I'm gonna move on to the
Yeah.
Jekyll and Hyde of Tech McMillan against Green Bay. Um, kind of what you expect out of rookie wide receivers, even midway through like their first season, their rookie season. So this is a good version. This is a really tight coverage he's going against. Um, and he's in the dig route on the 40-yard line catching that ball here. I can kind of zoom in. So basically you see a different view of the all 22. Bryce Young, great at managing the pocket and not a great window to
Mm-hmm.
like catch it confidently, but he does a great job extending his frame, concentrating on the ball, using overhand technique, going tough through the catch, and getting down immediately. So that this is a great rep by Tech McMillan. I think it shows you the trust and the confidence that Bryce
Mm-hmm.
Young has in him to be like that guy in the deep intermediate part of the field.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before I let you have your thoughts on it, I want you to see the other side of it and where I'm trying to take this angle. This was a red zone opportunity that Tech McMillan had, and he got completely open. I want you to watch this. He's kind of ISO'd on the corner, completely beats him, and then he drops the ball. Why did he drop the ball? Well, you're not going to see it from this angle, but once it reaches here, this should be a catch. This should be a touchdown. He has everything lined up perfectly. He's tracking the ball well. He's using overhand technique. And he has at least 2 yards of space on the defender. Let's see if I can get a better angle on this. Oh, this might be a better view. All right. So starts overhand. Then as he catches it, it slips. Why does it slip? Notice one of his hands, his right hand, is underhanded. as he tries to kind of corral the ball, like almost like he's sandwiching it. At that point, he's kind of fighting himself as he's
Mhm.
going down to the ground, and that's what causes the incompletion.
Mhm.
Whereas if he stayed overhand throughout, he would have been able to use that leverage to be able
Mhm.
to pull a ball into his body, and it would have been a touchdown catch.
Mhm.
So again, very, very finite details for a guy going through his rookie season. I just kind of wanted to show that as far as like what Tet is doing well right now, where he still has to work on, because the upside to be a number one wide receiver is there, but it's often this margin that kind of determines how far you go. I have a couple of Marvin Harrison Jr. clips where I think he's headed there now because he's fixed the same mistakes that Tet's making now last season. But
Mhm.
that's kind of like the good and bad, and like where Tet can be successful statistically, where he still has to grow before he can reach a ceiling.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like, we kind of saw some of this at Arizona, I think, right? Where he'd have his like super explosive games, and then he'd have his kind of like games where he wouldn't necessarily have the biggest games, and I think we see some of that, I guess, translate here. But I don't think that's like a major. I guess that's it feels like a very coachable issue in my head, in terms of just like how to make these catches. So overall, I'm not too concerned, but yeah, obviously, like it's a ball he should catch. Um, but I'm excited to see kind of how he and the team look again in like I don't know a year or two. I'm excited. It's always tricky to try to evaluate Bryce Young. He's like this game stat wise, he didn't necessarily have the craziest of stats, but also it is against the Packers defense, which I'd say is one of the scarier defenses to go against.
I mean, they did
But
win, and if you watch
they
some of the
did.
film on what he was doing in the pocket to
Hmm.
create like those throwing lanes, there's like plays where he has to like go in three different directions and like find
Hmm.
a window to throw the ball at his size, and he did a phenomenal job at that. This rep is not indicative of that because he had a really clean pocket, but Bryce Young has been a very, very creative passer, especially in last week. So I actually been pretty impressed when I was watching him. Um,
Hmm.
I think it's more one critique here, coaches don't really teach this during the week because they kind of just focus on game plan and like how do we gain advantages. This would probably be more of like an off season, like he'll have to correct it on his own kind of thing, unless he has a really, really, really good coaching staff that's harping on this entire
Hmm.
time. But most of the time, the short turnaround from week to week, they don't really get time to do that, right? Because they're doing their film review as a team. They're kind of figuring out like, oh, what do we do as an offense? Like these cadences, what tendencies do we
Hmm.
go with? Like, what calls are we taking in? Like walkthroughs, like travel if they're going on the road or coming back home and stuff like that. So I can see a scenario where it's not really being coached up to that
Hmm.
level during the week. But like, if Ted's only issue is just fixing the catch technique, he's
Hmm.
good. Like you've seen in the route, like he's dictating leverage good. He's gaining separation good against like really good cornerbacks, like number one cornerbacks, and he's getting in position to make these plays. You just got to
Hmm.
make them like with way more consistency, and
Yeah.
I think he'll get there. So
Yeah. So yeah, it'll be exciting to see how the Panthers look again in like a little bit. He's obviously going to get Jalen Coker back from injury, and so he hasn't had the biggest of games like we saw towards the end of last season. But I think he's the guy that helps the offense overall. Rico Dowdle's resurgence, these past couple of weeks has been phenomenal for him too.
running back
Um,
one.
mhm. And the fact that you have Juba Hubbard as now the technical backup, who I think is still a solid running back. Obviously, I think Dowdle fits, I guess, the team a lot better here, just from what we've seen the past couple of weeks. But the crazy stat, also with Bryce Young though, is he's like tied for the league lead in game-winning drives since entering the NFL now with this win.
Wow, like since last year.
Since he's entered the league
Wow. Okay. Well,
with nine, he has 9 game-winning drives.
just imagine to elevate the talent level on this team. Like that's exciting to
Mhm.
know. So,
Yeah.
yeah, Panthers, we see you. Great win. Um, that just goes to show where your ceiling's at.
Hmm.
Speaking of a great win, I spoke about this earlier. This is kind of the game-winning touchdown rep here. I want you to look at it from Caleb's angle here. Um, First of all, great pocket management and way to see this. But it's a 12-second clip. But in this 12-second clip, I want to go kind of in the halfway part. Let's see. So you kind of can't see it here. The safety's kind of rotating over because he's seen the ball getting thrown. He has to get this past a linebacker. He does a good job reading his leverage. He's moving right and fits it in a window where he knows Colson's going to be. And you see the other safety come down here. What does that kind of tell me? That tells me the Bengals are kind of in the cover two look. They're trying to stop all the intermediate passes, which is what you want to be in, like at this stage of the game, because they're up by one and they're trying to prevent a field goal. So they don't want the Bears getting to like the 30, 40-yard line in like intermediate chucks. So they're trying to stop the intermediate part of the field. But Caleb throws this with such great timing and whatnot that Colson's on the run and he's going to get at least 5 to 10 yards after this catch. So they're already in a position to get field goal range if he gets down and all these offensive players go to knock the ball down. But watch how poorly the tackling technique was here. Notice where his hands are. His hands are right here. They're not around his hips. He's leaning with his shoulder to try and make that tackle. And Colson's such a big body guy that's not going to work. And with the way the safety's over here, he's not expecting Colson to spin out of that. And that kind of creates the angle where he's able to run the rest of the way for 30 yards. So overall, great timing and placement by Caleb to put Colson in a position to get in the field goal range, and then Colson making a play out of nothing. I think this kind of separates him from like a Tyler Warren or Tucker Kraft as far as like he didn't have like much run after the catch ability here, like if they had the right tackling technique. But he kind of created out of that. And there's other plays where you see Colson Loveland kind of like singled out, kind of like by himself as like he was a wide receiver and he's winning one-on-one reps. His first touchdown actually came off of that. So again, this is more to show that like Caleb's making great progress, strides, playing clutch, and Colson Loveland is starting to get more comfortable with this offense and getting more comfortable with the NFL game speed. So
yeah. And with that, I mean, I don't necessarily blame that first guy's hit towards Colston Loveland as well. I mean, from my perspective, I could see it being like a case where the guy sees there's three other Bengals, like, right around him. And so he tries to lay a boom hit, where there's a potential chance he knocks the ball out just from like a big hit. Because, I mean, ultimately, like, if he knocks the ball out, then all of a sudden the Bears are far, far away from field goal position in anyways, right? And then let's say he catches it, he bounces off of you. There's three other guys right around you who should be able to make that tackle. Because like, are you telling me those three guys there couldn't get that tackle? Wouldn't that be your assumption if you're?
I think Geno Stone should have been in a better position, but I don't want to say 49 or maybe 28. Maybe 28 could have made that tackle. He kind of like backed up a little bit, and I think that didn't help matters. But definitely Geno Stone shouldn't have been that close to the ball if he saw his other teammate was right there. I think he was kind of moving too fast before thinking about it in that moment because you're just trying to get the guy down in the middle of the field, so they have to snap like with a running clock, right? So I'm just talking about the tackling technique. That's risky to go with the shoulder when knowing like there's a potential where you can break this tackle and like potentially either find a way to get out of bounds or like score like you did here, So
like evade four of his other teammates, like
yeah, like and even if he goes with the right technique, right? That shouldn't stop his other teammates from tackling too. So it's kind of on him for bad tackling technique, but also his teammates should have been there in a better position to help out. So
yeah. Well, I'm just saying, like him knocking the ball out from a big hit is the game-winning play, pretty much.
exactly. Yeah.
And that's why he hits with the shoulder. That's why I think he leads with the shoulder there. But obviously, in hindsight, it's easy to say he should have just made the clean tackle.
Right. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Fantastic to see in real time. I did not think it would happen.
Yeah.
I think this is the second straight week that we have Sam Darnold just being. I think this season's become like a Sam Darnold, like Drake May, just love fest on the channel. So I'm just going through 2-minute highlights of like Sam Darnold here, and we'll kind of just enjoy it while he's passing the ball. But the things I'm noticing is he's playing with great position and timing, and he's playing with confidence. And like he knows where to throw the ball, he knows where to locate it, and he's not really wasting time trying to create. He knows he's got a great playmaker in JSN, who missed a touchdown catch opportunity because he had a great route.
Mhm.
And even while some of these plays aren't perfect by the receivers as far as like holding on to the ball, like you could see he's being very decisive, giving run after catch opportunities to his backs, tight ends, receivers. So, yeah, just the way Sam Darnold's playing, he's on a heater right now. Um, he's marrying the scheme to like fit his playmakers. Torrey Horton also had a great game yesterday. So, yeah, awesome job, Sam Darnold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, he's playing good. That first half was an absolute masterclass by him, going 17 for 17. Like, he's a dog.
Yeah. And I think on the tweet it said he was going like 17.6 like um yards per pass attempt. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
just insane. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And not to mention we'll talk about it later, but they just made upgraded in a major way. I
Mm-hmm.
think their offense is like they're causing the NFC to be wide open this year.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
not the Eagles, it's not just the Packers. You got to worry about this team and a couple others. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, great job, Sam Darnold last week.
Yeah.
All right. Last clip kind of alluded to this. This is Marvin Harrison Jr. Um, obviously, beginning of the season, we kind of highlighted on the channel, like where his flaws are. He had a phenomenal game against the Cowboys, and it seems like he kind of figured it out. Look at this rep against, I think it's Ron Bland. Like, got the least separation, breaks his ankles. But I want you to pay attention to kind of this is a 1 minute clip too. So,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
but again, just like Ted, he maintains overhand technique through the cap, and it makes it look super easy. Um, yeah, some of these are kind of just like your NFL like highlight plays. You're not going to see like what he's doing from the route perspective, but I want you to see how much of yards of separation he's getting on each of these catches. Defenders
Mm-hmm.
like I think the big difference, something I picked up on the broadcast, is when he was working with his dad, he had to play with a lot more speed into the top of his route before breaking it off because he was trying to think too much in his rookie year and like at the start of this year. Once he
Mm-hmm.
started focusing on just trying to create speed and getting vertical as soon as possible, and even though he's breaking off routes in different directions, that kind of made the difference for him, and you're starting to see it play out in the stat line. So
Mm-hmm.
Marvin Harrison Jr., I think the sky's the limit from this point forward. I think he's figured it out. I no longer have concerns with him as far as like drop techniques. Could it happen? Yes, obviously, like any player, but
Mm-hmm.
I think this kind of game is a confidence booster, and I'm hoping he's been able to play like this with Kyler when Kyler comes back. But this is a
Mm-hmm.
great sign when you see him play like with this speed and like not doubting or overthinking himself.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when we talked about him earlier too, I think a big point was that like we've seen that I mean, even in his rookie season, he is an elite route runner. Like we see him constantly getting open. It was the mix of like just the ball not getting to him, and then some of these concentration drops. And so like once he's able to fix some of those, I think that'll help. I think Jacoby Brissett here is, I mean, just playing quarterback at a elevated level compared to Kyler Murray as well. If I'm like the team or a fan of the team, I want Brissett to be starting the rest of the season over Kyler Murray, even when Kyler's healthy, just because how much better the offense looks as a whole when Jacoby's in. um, yeah, so that's, I don't know. I don't have too much else to add on besides that, but yeah.
Sweet. Well, that will wrap it up for this week's film review. If you guys got a couple that you want to share, like post weeks, let us know in the comment section. But yeah, um, yeah, it was fun. I think we're seeing a lot of growth and like where players got to grow in very similar trajectories. But Corstian, I know you're itching to give in your power rankings, so I'll let you take it away over here.
Okay. This week, power rankings top 5. Nobody is in the same spot compared to last week. So before we had the top 9 last week, top 9 teams had all stayed the same. This time, there's only 2 teams in the entirety of the league that I have at the same spot as they were last week. So lots of change this week. But anyways, Team number 5 is the New England Patriots. Team number 4 is the Indianapolis Colts. Team number 3 is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Team number 2 is the Seattle Seahawks. And team number 1 is the LA Rams.
Okay. Who's the number 3 team again?
Number 3, the Buccaneers.
Okay, so the Lions are no longer on this list after their loss to the Vikings. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Well, I mean, they're at number 6, so it's not like they're too far off, but yeah.
Okay. What was the reason for any of the rankings?
I mean, like, obviously with the Lions and the Colts, just like unfortunate losses, I guess. With the Colts, it's still against the Steelers, which are an infuriating team, I think, to watch if I was a fan of. Cause, with the Steelers, I'm like, it feels like they win games they shouldn't, and then they lose some games that they also shouldn't. Which makes it where it's like Steelers should have. Looking like 3 weeks ago, Steelers should have had the division in the bag, but now we're like last week we're questioning: can the Bengals win it? Can the Ravens win it? But anyway, so them losing hurt their rankings a little bit. Obviously, naturally, a loss is going to push you down a little bit. I was like wondering where I want to put them, but then with the Colts as well, like with the addition of Sauce Gardner, which I know we'll talk about later, and then you look at the Colts and they had 6 turnovers, I think, over the course of the game where the offense lost the ball, and they lost by like a single score. And I look at that as well, and I'm like, a team with 6 turnovers only losing by a single score is a very resilient team. That is a very scary team to end up going against even rest of the schedule. So they made that top 4, or they remained the number 4 spot. Rams were number 2 last week. They just move up naturally with the Colts falling. And then a lot of similarities with like the Seahawks, the Buccaneers, Patriots, all just climbing a little bit with some of these other top 5s moving out of spots where those other teams either won or like, I mean, I think the Buccaneers are on a bye, so I can really, evaluate them like super properly, but the Buccaneers moved up 1 spot naturally just from the Colts falling to 4. Seahawks, Rams won, Patriots obviously the win. Yeah, and they won against, they won in a way that I felt was adequate for a team of their caliber as well.
Where do you have the Broncos in all this?
Broncos are at number 8.
Okay. That makes sense. Yep. Okay. All right.
Where do you think I had the Broncos?
I don't know, because knowing you, I didn't know if you had them 10th or 11th, because I know you're always fluctuating on it. And then after their defense holding Texans to like 5 field goals but like only scoring 18 points, I didn't know if you're like, okay, we should have won by more, especially after CJ Stroud exits with injury. I didn't know if that was like, okay, that one is not as impressive, but they are 7-2. So I just was wanting you to keep that in mind. But I think with the caliber of teams you mentioned in your top 5 and their records, along with where the Broncos are, I totally see that. And other team I was curious about was the Buffalo Bills, where you have them.
The Buffalo Bills are at 7.
Oh, okay. So after the Lions, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
Where the big drop here was with the Chiefs. Obviously, I think they're still going to be competitive in the playoff race, but sitting at 5-4 at this point of the season isn't necessarily a great look, for the Chiefs. And honestly, just seeing the way, I mean, obviously the Bills have the Chiefs number in the regular season, it seems, so it's like, it almost feels like a gimme, even though it's always going to be a good game. But it looked like the Bills are kind of just bullying Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. I don't know how much you saw of like just kind of the hits that they got.
Bishop was a monster, man. He was all over the field.
Yeah, and then there's like the AJ Epineza hit, I think, where he like blasted Mahomes as he was like kind of right on the sidelines. No flag was called, which is pretty cool too. But well, I mean, there was the whole controversy like earlier this season or end of last season where like Mahomes,
if he sneezed on Mahomes, you get flagged.
He flopped, like he got hit inbounds, but acted like but then he like flopped exiting or whatever, and you're like. And I remember the announcers too were laughing. They're like, "Come on, man! Like you're in bounds. You can't be flopping on a play like that, trying to bait the penalty." So I'm just glad. It seemed like overall it was a clean game, but yeah. So the Chiefs took a fall, and then the Packers also naturally took a fall after losing to the Carolina Panthers.
Can't be losing to the Panthers and the Browns. Expect to be a top 5 team. So
Yeah, you were dissing me last week about why aren't the top of the leaderboard Packers there, and then I'm like, well, I mean,
that's why.
this is why I feel like my prediction, my assessment there last week, having them at 8 and now they're at 10, I think, feels rather justified. Obviously, I don't think many people predicted the Packers to lose to the Panthers, but the power rankings, I guess, tell the truth sometimes.
So I think what it sounds like is the power rankings are a sign of things to come. But alrighty, that brings us to the trade deadline. There are a lot of moves being made. I'm going to start us off here. I think you would agree that this is a really good move for this team. Dallas Cowboys had traded Micah Parsons at the start of this season, and Jerry Jones had hinted the day before that they have a deal in place. Obviously, I think fans initially panicked and was like, "Oh, trading Logan Wilson for like
Logan.
round pick? Yeah, like that's gonna totally change our
That
fortunes."
was the funniest news I saw all day. Of like when that came in, I knew every Cowboys fan was in panic mode. They were like, "Is this it?"
Yeah, nope. But that's not the deal I'm talking about. It's Quinnen Williams to the Cowboys.
Mhm.
Cowboys give up a 2026 second round pick, 2027 first round pick. I think it's the highest of the two. And then defensive tackle Mozzie Smith. So they kind of swap defensive tackles, but they get a really, really good, talented one on a bad team. Corstian, what are your thoughts? Was this also like a deal you really liked as well?
I don't know. I was really conflicted about this deal. I think maybe long term this is better for the Cowboys. Um, just because you still got draft picks remaining. So I think if the Cowboys only had that singular pick without any of the compensation for the Micah Parsons trade, I would have disliked this a bit more. Um, but then like the fact that they do have other picks, like it makes me more comfortable. Like they can still add on to their team with first round caliber talent beyond what they're getting from Quinnen Williams. And it was the whole case of like, obviously this season to me is a loss, more or less a lost season for the Dallas Cowboys. I'm sitting at 3-5-1. Like the path back to the playoffs seems really tough, especially like how we've been talking all season, how competitive the NFC has been. We have the Carolina Panthers with the same record as the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Like it's it's a competitive NFC. And so it's hard to see that. But then I think of like long-term value, right? Where it's like the Cowboys offense, I don't envision to regress next season. And so maybe they are able to draft like one of the top defensive backs in the class next season. I think that's kind of the big issue for this team, where Deron Bland just does not look good this season. And so you have like a lot of secondary regression, but you do add a staple piece. And I think Quinnen Williams is in fact like a top 3 interior defensive lineman in the league right now. I've talked about him before as like I think he is one of the best, if not the best, defensive lineman in the league. Obviously, he's had not as great of stats over the last year or so, but so from that aspect, I do like this long term. But it just comes at a weird time, in my opinion. I guess is what I want to say.
Yeah, I think had they won last night's game, like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of perception would have been changed. I think the
Mm-hmm.
fact that they did lose to like Chicago, Carolina, and then now Arizona, and then make this move is kind of conflicting. Where it's like, okay, I think you might have rather kept the picks because
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be higher value, but I do like them getting Quinton Williams with Kenny Clark. I think both
Mm-hmm.
players are still like avid contributors. They haven't had that level of talent on the defensive tackle specifically. And for
Mm-hmm.
Matt Eberflus's scheme, even though I despise him as a head coach, he really needs that like 3 technique to be really, really good. We talked about this
Mm-hmm.
with Kenny Clark. Now you get this with Quinton Williams for the long term. I think this will
Mm-hmm.
be good for the Cowboys. They're going to generate a much better pass rush, which was pretty good with Jadeveon Clowney and Dante Fowler once they had him. So now they suddenly have a really, really lethal front four. But you are completely right. Their secondary is getting feasted on. like every single time. Like I think only the
Mhm.
Bengals have a worse defense than them right now. You could argue the Bears at times, but yeah, like I like this move for them. It just kind of they didn't give up as much capital as I thought you would for Quentin Williams, but
Mhm.
they have to hit on those picks in order to make good on the Micah Parsons deal,
Yeah.
because that was a big loss for them, and it's you kind of see like the overall impact it's had on that defense.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, you also see like Quentin Williams is a 27-year-old defensive lineman, and I mean, this is the fact that defensive, like especially interior defensive linemen, right, are going to take an extra beating, and so you don't know when that skill fall off might happen. Sometimes like a 30-year-old defensive lineman just kind of has this fall off because of the physical toll it takes. Sometimes you see a guy like oh my gosh, I'm blanking on Haloti Nada, right? Like who seemingly plays forever. You have Brandon Graham who's coming back to the Eagles for whatever reason, right? Like you have these guys who play in the trenches who seemingly play forever, and so you really never know. And so I think the compensation is good compensation. This just feels like an off-season type of trade, if that makes sense. Between teams where
Right.
it's
Which is why it's
considering the
baffling why it
caliber
took
of
so
both
long to
teams.
sign Micah slash trade him or like address other needs if they knew they were going to make this
Mhm.
like the route they go on. So yeah,
Yeah, and so I mean, this feels like a complete overhaul might be taking place with the Jets here in terms of like like restarting the rebuild essentially. Where I think when you brought in Aaron Rodgers, you try to bring in pieces that you're like, oh, this might make us competitive. That didn't work out, and so now you're like, well, we have all these pieces. Some of them are worthless, really, but then some of them do have value still that are starting to age, but we don't think might be relevant by the time we're relevant. Because if you're thinking like a 4-year rebuild for them coming up, right? You're at Quentin Williams being like 31, 32 years old, right? And you're like, he still could be producing then, but he's at the tail end, and you can't really build a dynasty franchise, out of a guy that's 32 years old. And so, from that end, I think, the Jets did make a good move here. I mean, moving off from him, um, I think the Jets should have sold harder on other players too, just to like really commit to the rebuild. But I guess they didn't. So,
they have
um,
5 first round picks.
mhm,
They do have a lot of assets now, but I'm
mhm,
gonna cut you off here because I do want
yeah,
to see like what other trades you liked.
mhm.
Um, go right ahead. What was the deal you really liked here?
um, then I'll bring up the Sauce Gardner trade.
Okay.
Going to the Colts. That I'm always iffy about Sauce Gardner as a cornerback. Like I think he is a good cornerback, but I don't think he's like that top 5 type of guy that a lot of people, or not maybe a lot of people, but a lot of like sports networks had rated him as over the past couple seasons, and so it's like hard to gauge his value. There's a lot of instances where people say he's holding, but he's not getting called for these holding calls. Lucky he's going to a winning team, so like I mean, they typically get some of those benefit of the doubt penalty calls on their side. So maybe that won't be too big of an issue for him still, but um, I mean, it's a lot to give up, right? I mean, it's 2 first round picks, but then you also think if you're on the Colts, right? Odds are that next year's first round pick probably does end up being a cornerback of some capacity for your team instead of getting Sauce Gardner. And then you're basically paying an extra first rounder for the assurance that it's going to be the guy of the caliber of Sauce Gardner rather than drafting a cornerback. And maybe he might be good in a couple years, but is a very developmental kind of guy. Or he just flat out will never be good over the course of his career, or is just like injury prone. I think of like Jeff Okuda, right? You were like, oh,
Right.
no, duh, he's going to be a superstar. It's Jeff Okuda. He's going to be the best cornerback, and I'm getting him for like a 5th round pick in the trade as a steal or whatever, And they're like, oh, he still has value, he still has value. He just can't stay healthy, which regards he can't develop. And so it's like the Colts don't want to risk drafting someone that should be good that doesn't turn out good, obviously in the first round, and you get a guaranteed good guy basically for a first round pick, and then like the second guaranteeing one.
As they're trying to make a playoff push, like
Yeah,
that
that too.
now that they see where they're at, they're like, okay, let's go all in while we have the chance.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
um I thought it was a bit much considering like how Sauce has played lately.
Mhm.
But I do understand where Indy's coming from, where they're thinking a new change of scenery. based on some of the talents changes they've had could cause that to happen. So I thought they moved on from Adonai too quickly. But at the same time, their wide receiver room is as it is stacked, so I think they can be able to manage that. Um, I think this is a great get for the Jets, honestly, because Quinton and Sauce, like they weren't going anywhere on this team, like as they're trying to rebuild, and by the time you get this team ready, they might be on their way out the door, so you lose the value on them completely. Here at least gives you a chance to kind of like have all your assets to start the rebuild and like make your own input on the culture, which needs a complete culture reshift. So I thought this was a great trade for the Jets. For the Colts, it's better work out within the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that's a lot to give up. So that's why you see it stop in 2027. And who knows? Adonai Mitchell might be a guy like with the opportunities to get outside of Garrett Wilson. It's a wide open opportunity for him. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and like it just makes their nickel packages stronger because obviously now you can have Kenny more exclusively play in the slot for them here, where I think he does excel at, rather than needing him to play boundary or rely on like Becton or Cameron Mitchell to be that other boundary corner, And so you have a guy that, while he isn't played as good, I think is his first season or two. I feel like the Colts can be more confident putting him on an island with some of these better cornerbacks and allowing the rest of the defense to function as is without needing to really put that much concern over other teams' number one guys, because that effectively,
and especially in Anarumo's scheme, like Anarumo's one of those defensive play callers where he was not the problem in Cincy last year. You could see it was like a clear talent deficiency, and he kind of got scapegoated for it. But he's a fantastic defensive coordinator. I think Sauce is going to shine. So really excited for his prospects there.
Yeah.
All right, for me, I'm going to go to the other side of the chain here. Kind of hinted at this a little bit when discussing the Seahawks, but Rashid Shaheed going to the Seahawks and the New Orleans Saints, reuniting with his former offensive coordinator, now current offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak. He's not had a lot of big game potential, but he and Olavi have been like trade candidates going through NFL circles, and finally he gets to get reunited in that situation. And with Cooper Kupp battling injuries, Troy Horton's obviously stepping up, AJ Barner you've seen in various weeks. I think this is the exact type of move you make when you have a guy like GSN playing out of his mind and kind of prevent defenses from keying in on him. This is an all-in move by the Seahawks, and very, very smart move. Like for a team that's ready to go all in. So I really love this deal. I don't even know what did they trade for him. They traded a 2026 fourth and fifth round pick. I would do that in a heartbeat. I think that's a steal right here.
Yeah. I think that's a good package to get him. And obviously, I mean, it comes with the idea that you're not trading for a wide receiver one as well, and so he's not going to demand that wide receiver one price that maybe Chris Olave would have demanded. But then I think he adds just dynamicism for the Seahawks offense, and and like, I mean, Rashid Shaheed has developed into a really solid wide receiver as well, where I think early on in his career, people might have just classified him as a deep threat exclusively.
Right.
But then, like, I even saw, like, on some of his shorter routes, he had really incredible run after catch ability that, I think was what initially kickstarted him into kind of that stardom wide receiver stage for the Saints a couple of years ago. And then I think from, like, the Saints end too, obviously losing a guy like Shaheed is unfortunate, but I mean, you look at the Saints rebuild situation, and I think they're a couple years away from genuinely being competitive, albeit like if Tyler Shuck turns out to like just flip the switch for whatever reason and is a superstar quarterback over the next couple weeks, then all of a sudden I'll be like, maybe they shouldn't have traded Shaheed away, but realistically, it's probably a couple of years until that comes to fruition for him. And Shaheed's already a 27-year-old wide receiver, so he's like directly in his prime right now. Where in like 3 or 4 years he's going to begin exiting that said prime, where you're like, oh, we can't really use him as a beneficial asset, that really elevates the team, and he's just more going to be of a a single aspect that we have to scheme open. I don't know. He's kind of like Brandon Cooks at this stage in his career. Obviously, they're different players, but you can't really you don't game plan for Brandon Cooks at this stage in his career, right? Like, but he's still
Right.
a decent player. So I think similar case happens with Rashid Shaheed. By the time the Saints team might be competitive, and so I think that's a smart move for both parties. Right here,
Okay.
yeah.
Sweet. All right. Well, what other deals do you like over here?
Let's see. Maybe like the Jacoby Myers deal.
Why did I know you were going to say him?
I'm a big Jacoby Myers fan, despite him being on the Raiders the last couple seasons. But I think he's like a really underrated guy. And I think especially with the news of Travis Hunter going, like, potentially missing the rest of the season, the Jaguars are in this really weird spot of kind of being playoff relevant, where you're in a.
I think they have one of the wild card spots now. They might be 6th or 7th.
I think there's 7 right now in the wild card.
Okay.
Yeah, there's number 7 right now, sitting at 4-3, and so you're or 5-3, and so you're in the spot where you're like, we're kind of competitive, like we're in a spot where we definitely shouldn't think it. They're definitely not sellers because of just where they are sitting. They have a clear shot to be at least the number 2 team in their own division, and so you're in that spot. Trevor Lawrence seems to have little to no chemistry with Brian Thomas, and so. You're missing your wide receiver too effectively. There, Diami Brown, you're paying him $10 million, I guess, to be here. And then you have a guy like Jacoby Myers, who I think is a solid route runner, solid wide receiver. But I think this helps maybe open up the receiving room for Brian Thomas potentially as well. Obviously, Travis Hunter had his good moments, but I think it's a weird rookie season for him, obviously, because you're having him take reps on offense and on defense, and so you can't really fully commit to developing one aspect of his game, which kind of slows it down. But now you have a guy in Jacoby Myers, who, even if it is a one-season rental type player, is a guy that what he can do at the wide receiver position, and I think really helps them at least try to fight for that 6th or 7th seed in the playoffs.
Absolutely. And I think what was surprising to me is he went for a cheaper overall cost than Rashid Shaheed did, because Jacoby Myers is a more established player, and he's still doing it. Like, I've seen him routing guys up and whatnot, and I think this is the perfect situation for him in Jacksonville. He's really going to get a lot of opportunities to shine, and I think it will help Brian Thomas Jr. actually when I look at this deal, because you have a guy on the opposite side who can win in similar ways as he can. I think he will make his life much easier. I think it's an overall boost for his offense, so I like this deal too.
Yeah.
Just to kind of keep things moving along, I was really shocked at the trade price when I saw this, and I was like, is this too much? Is this not? I was kind of struggling with it, but I thought for the team he went to, this is a great fit considering they lost a lot of edge rushers over the past offseason. Jalen Phillips to the Philadelphia Eagles for a 3rd-round pick was a great get by the Eagles. It's just your classic, like, okay, let's bring Brandon Graham out of retirement, but then let's also make this deal for Jalen Phillips, because we don't know how much we'll get out of Brandon Graham. It's just Howie Roseman doing Howie Roseman things, where it's like recognizing a weakness, turning it into a strength. And then when you had Jahad Campbell coming along, suddenly you're starting to get all those pieces that help make them win a Super Bowl last year come to fruition. So this is how he's saying, hey, we need to improve our pass rush so our defense can get better. And I love this move for the Eagles. Dolphins, you kind of need to make this move, get as much assets as you can. You don't have Chris Gear anymore as GM. You're kind of going into a new situation. More than likely firing a coach and get rid of the quarterback. I'd be really shocked if both stay. But yeah, it's kind of one of those moves where they had to be sellers now. So I can understand why this deal was made.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this is like, I think, a beneficial thing for all 3 parties involved, including the player right here. Because Phillips was honestly not playing that good with the Dolphins this season. Remember,
he's come off an injury though.
Well, yeah, but like, I've seen Dolphins fans hating on him pretty hard this season. Like, his 1 sack against the Ravens, right, came in garbage time, and so you're like, cool, we got a garbage time sack from him that boosts his stats a little bit. Um, and so it's a situation where like maybe his heart. I mean, being on the Dolphins, I don't know how much my heart would be in it, but like it's hard to feel competitively motivated going 100% all the time when your team just sucks. And so I think this change of scenery hopefully is able to kind of give him a little kickstart where he feels maybe some of that, that football motivation, and that desire to like play harder on a more frequent basis, I guess, for a team that is actually competitive. So I think again for him, I think it's a good move. And so if they get that kind of revamped, re-energized version of Phillips here in Philadelphia, obviously it's going to be a great move, especially for the compensation. And then the Dolphins, I think, just needed to move off from him. And I think, honestly, there's a chance that they would have taken less for him as well. And so I think they got a good value just because I think there was a situation where both parties weren't really happy with each other being on the same team.
Yeah, I think if you look at the Dolphins, they're another team that you have to kind of like just rebuild from the ground up because of the
Mm-hmm.
way the team has lost his identity and like a coach that can get the most out of it. So like it's one of those things where like Jalen Jalen Phillips doesn't really fit this picture. Like once they kind of reorganize themselves, so it's kind of like a smart move of the organization to make this move now. Kind of sucks for like what they hoped at him when they drafted him, but making the move now, trying to recoup value out of it so you can get it. I fully understand. While doing the right by the player and like making sure he plays through December and January on a team in a much better situation. Um, and plus where he has an opportunity to make an impact for himself where he can shut up those Miami naysayers up and really
Mm-hmm.
make a big impact. I think he has a lot of opportunity here. Um, I just don't know how Howie Roseman is going to pay all the talent he's acquired. It's just crazy. He just
Yeah.
seemingly gets like superstars everywhere. So
I mean, you see like at least a healthy-ish amount of talent also leave the team. Where I think specifically with like the pass rushers, where they're never
Josh
at least
Sweat,
over, yeah, where they're not overly committed. You lose Hassan Reddick a couple years ago, and so it's like they're not afraid to let go of guys just because. I think on top of everything, they're just really good at drafting, and through these drafts, they're able to keep on recycling through these guys. Where it's like, oh, these guys have a big contract, I mean, you look at their defensive backs, right? They're paying literally pennies and dimes in terms of the market, right? For their top two cornerbacks in
Peter
Cooper
Jeans,
DeJean,
and Quinyon Mitchell.
right? And so from that end, you're able to spend a little bit extra money at other parts of the defense because you're paying pennies on that. And then for a while when you had it was James Bradbury and Darius Slay back there who you were getting the big bucks from. Literally, your entire front seven was on like a rookie contract, and so like you can afford to spend on these guys, right? And so just the fact that they're so good at drafting, and developing their guys, I think is the magic of Howie Roseman of you know regardless of who he brings in, like they have guys that are up and coming that can inevitably replace the veterans that they do let go via free agency or trade.
Next guy up, Jihad Campbell. So
Mhm.
the wheel keeps on churning. So
Right.
with that, that recaps this week's episode. Of course, John, before I let you go, I would ask you this, but I think it's pretty obvious. Who do you think wins Thursday night?
I think it'll probably be the Broncos. If a Jacoby Meyerless Raiders and Geno Smith beat the Broncos while the Broncos are wearing their vintage uniforms, I think I might cry. But let's hope it doesn't come to that.
All right, Brock, you heard him. He's gonna score 3 touchdowns now for 120 yards because he's on my
Yeah.
dynasty team, and I just asked him to. So
I mean,
um,
if the
they'll probably
Broncos
still
will
lose.
still win, I'm okay with that.
All right. Okay. I also got the Broncos. I think they're absolutely rolling. That defense is ferocious.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter if they have Sertan or not. They're just crazy. And I
Mm-hmm.
need Bo to score like 4 touchdowns on these cats. So, yeah, that will do it for us. You can follow us on our Instagram channel at amon.a.mission. Um, like, subscribe. Let us know who you think. Let us know if you agree with Corstian's power rankings or which players you want to see next week. Um, or what was your favorite deal from the trade deadline? And with that, we'll see you guys later. Take it easy, guys.
Peace.